Audience a brief overview of the major clubs here in Portugal.
Yeah, well, there's traditionally, of course, it's the big three, which is Benfica and Sporting, who are from Lisbon, and FC Porto, who are from Portugal's second city, Porto. They've dominated really Portuguese football right throughout its history. Throughout the history of Portuguese football, those three clubs have won every single championship apart from two. So, you know, there's no doubt all the best players play for either Benfica, Sporting or Porto. As soon as a player starts, you know, really making himself noticed at one of the lesser clubs, it's just a matter of time before one of the so-called big three snap him up or he goes abroad. Because unfortunately, outside the big three, it's quite difficult for Portuguese clubs to compete with other clubs, especially with these three clubs, but also with other clubs abroad. And so Benfica were the first side to really make a global impact. They won the European Cup twice in the 60s and got to the final also on several other occasions. And of course, this was helped by Eusebio, who was the first real global superstar of Portuguese football. And he really raised the profile of Portuguese football, as well as his achievements with Benfica. Also for the Portugal national team, he was top scorer at the 1966 World Cup and is widely considered one of the best strikers of all time. And he is really the mascot of Benfica and to a certain extent still of Portuguese football. Recently, it's been FC Porto who have dominated the last 2 decades, especially 2.5 decades. FC Porto has been the strongest side in Portugal, won the European Cup and the Champions League twice in that time. They've always got a very competitive side in Europe, unlike Sporting and Benfica, who've struggled a little bit in the last decade, 2 decades, to really make themselves a force to be reckoned with in Europe. That's not the case of FC Porto. They've completely dominated in Portugal and they've been a very strong side in Europe. Sporting, they had their best days perhaps, or their most historically successful times were in the 50s. Also, they won 5 championships on the row. Traditionally, it was, at that time, it was always a fight between Sporting and Benfica. Nowadays it's more FC Porto and Benfica. Perhaps Benfica have come back strongly in the last couple of years. Outside those 3 teams, we've got 3 or 4 other sides who always try and make themselves maybe the 4th biggest team in Europe. In recent years it's been Braga. They've done very well. Did very well considering their resources, because their resources just don't compare to, you know, probably one player from Benfica would cost the same as the entire squad from Braga. But Braga have done very well. You know, last season they almost won the championship, went right to the very last round, and then in Europe also they've achieved some very good results, even beating Arsenal this season. And so a lot of these other teams, Braga, Guimarães, the 2 teams from Madeira, Marítimo, Nacional, you can expect them always to be around about the top of the table in Portugal and maybe achieve some good results in Europe, but they're never going to get to the kind of level as the big three.